The Galactic Council chamber was the largest room in the known universe. It floated in the empty space between 3 star systems, a massive sphere made of crystal and metal that could hold 10,000 representatives from 1,000 different species. Today, every seat was filled. Every eye, every sensor, every tentacle was focused on the small group of humans standing at the center of the room. Admiral Park Dohan stood perfectly still. He was a tall man with gray hair and a face that showed no emotion. Behind him stood 12 other humans, all wearing the simple black uniforms of the United Earth Fleet. They had been standing there for 3 hours, listening to the Council make their demands. The Council speaker, a creature called Prelax, towered over the human delegation. Prelax belonged to a species called the Velthari. He had 6 legs, a body covered in hard shell, and 2 large eyes that never blinked. His voice clicked and buzzed as he spoke, but the translation device made his words clear. "The Council has decided," Prelax announced. "Humanity will surrender all Hearthstone deposits on the planet you call Mars. You will also pay a tax of 30% on all minerals extracted from your solar system. This is the price of your continued membership in the galactic community." Park Dohan did not move. He did not speak. "These terms are generous," Prelax continued. "Other species have paid far more for the privilege of galactic citizenship. You should be grateful." Still, the Admiral said nothing. The silence stretched on for a long moment. Representatives from dozens of species shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was not how negotiations worked. When the Council made demands, species were supposed to argue, to beg, to offer alternatives. They were not supposed to simply stand there like statues. Ambassador Yoon Ji-won stepped forward. She was a small woman with short black hair and eyes that seemed to look through people rather than at them. She had served as Earth's voice in this chamber for 15 years. Everyone knew her. Everyone respected her ability to find compromise, to smooth over conflicts, to keep the peace. Today, there would be no peace. Ji-won looked up at Prelax. She looked at the thousands of alien faces watching her. Then she spoke, her voice calm and clear. "You will return what you took, or you will learn why we survived." 12 words. That was all she said. Then she turned around and walked toward the exit. Admiral Park Dohan followed her. The other 11 humans fell into step behind them. Their boots made soft sounds on the crystal floor as they walked across the vast chamber. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. The entire Galactic Council sat frozen in shock. Then Prelax made a sound that the translator could not process. It might have been anger. It might have been fear. When he spoke again, his voice was sharp. "You cannot leave. Negotiations are not complete. This is an insult to the Council." Ji-won did not stop walking. She did not look back. "Guards!" Prelax shouted. "Stop them." The Council security forces moved to block the exit. There were 50 of them, large warriors from a species called the Dominari. They were bred for combat, with thick armor-like skin and arms that could crush metal. Each one carried a weapon that could kill a human with a single shot. Admiral Park Dohan stopped walking. He looked at the guards blocking his path. Then he smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "I would not recommend that," he said quietly. The lead guard stepped forward. "You will return to the negotiation floor. That is an order from the Council." Park Dohan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. It looked like a simple metal cylinder, no bigger than his finger. He held it up so everyone could see. "This is a quantum beacon," he explained. His voice was still calm, almost friendly. "Right now, it is sending a signal to every human ship within 50 light years. If I'm harmed, if any member of my delegation is harmed, those ships have orders to destroy this station." Prelax made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. You have no ships. Your fleet is a collection of cargo vessels and exploration craft. You could not threaten a mining station, let alone the council chamber. Are you certain of that? Park Doan asked. The question hung in the air. Suddenly, the council chamber did not feel so safe anymore. Move aside, the admiral said to the guards. Now, the guards looked at each other. They looked at Prelax. The council speaker was silent for a long moment. Then he waved one of his legs in a gesture of dismissal. Let them go, he said. They will return when they realize they have no choice. The guards stepped aside. The human delegation walked through the exit without another word. Kim Suji watched them leave from the observation gallery, high above the main floor. She was the only human remaining in the council chamber, officially listed as a cultural attach. In reality, she was something very different. Suji had spent 20 years building relationships with species across the galaxy. She knew secrets that would shock most humans. She knew which council members took bribes. She knew which species were on the edge of rebellion. She knew where the bodies were buried, both literally and figuratively. And she knew why the humans had walked out today. Below her, the council descended into chaos. Representatives shouted at each other in a dozen different languages. Prelax banged his front legs against his speaking platform, trying to restore order. The sound echoed through the chamber like thunder. What did they mean? A Velthari representative demanded. What did we take? I do not understand. It is a bluff, a Dominari counselor replied. Humans are weak. They have no power. They are simply trying to frighten us. Then why did they refuse to negotiate? Another voice asked. No species has ever refused to negotiate. Not in 3,000 years. Suji smiled to herself. That was exactly the point. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had controlled every species through negotiation. They offered trade deals that always favored the Council. They imposed taxes that slowly drained wealth from newer civilizations. They used economic pressure to keep everyone in line. And it worked. It always worked. Because every species believed they had no other choice. The humans had just shown them that there was another choice. Suji pulled out her own communication device and sent a short message. Phase 1 complete. They are scared. The reply came back almost instantly. Good. Begin Phase 2. She tucked the device away and continued watching the chaos below. The council members were starting to argue about what to do next. Some wanted to send a fleet to Earth immediately. Others wanted to wait and see if the humans would come back to negotiate. A few were already suggesting that perhaps the council had been too harsh in their demands. None of them knew the truth. None of them knew that 200 years ago, the council had made a terrible mistake. They had killed a farmer on a small planet called Earth. They had stolen resources from his land. They had thought no one would ever find out. But someone had survived. Someone had seen everything. And that someone had passed down a promise through generations of her family. A promise of revenge. The Galactic Council thought they were the most powerful force in the universe. They thought they controlled everything. They thought humanity was just another weak species that would bend to their will. They were about to learn how wrong they were. In her observation post, Kim Suji settled back to watch the show. The council members were still arguing, still trying to understand what had just happened. They had no idea that this was only the beginning. Somewhere out in the darkness of space, Admiral Park Dawn's ship was already jumping to faster-than-light speed. Behind him, hidden in the shadows of 100 asteroid fields and gas clouds, 12,000 human warships waited for his command. The silence had ended. The war was about to begin. 263 years before Ambassador Yoon Ji-won walked out of the Galactic Council, the night sky over a small Korean village lit up with strange colors. Lee Taiwan was a farmer. He had been a farmer all his life, just like his father and his grandfather before him. He grew rice in the wet fields near the river and vegetables on the hillside behind his house. His wife had died 3 years ago, leaving him alone with their young daughter, Yuna. Taiwan was a simple man. He did not understand much about the world beyond his village. He did not know about politics or science or the mysteries of the universe. He only knew how to work the land, how to watch the seasons, how to provide for his child. That night, he was sitting on his porch, watching the stars. Yuna was asleep inside the house. The air was cool and fresh, carrying the smell of the rice paddies. It was peaceful. Then the sky exploded. Taiwan jumped to his feet as a ball of fire streaked across the darkness. It was not a shooting star. It was too big, too bright, too loud. The ground shook as the object crashed somewhere beyond the hills to the north. "Father?" Yuna's voice came from inside the house. She was only 8 years old, with wide eyes and a curious mind. "What was that sound?" "Stay inside," Taiwan told her. "I will go look." He grabbed a lantern and walked toward the hills. Other villagers were coming out of their homes, pointing at the smoke rising from the crash site. Some were afraid. Some were excited. None of them knew what they were about to find. Taiwan climbed the hill and looked down into the valley on the other side. What he saw made no sense to his simple farmer's mind. A machine sat in the middle of his family's ancestral fields. It was huge, bigger than any building in the village, made of metal that shone with colors Taiwan had never seen before. Parts of it were broken and smoking. Around it, strange shapes were moving. They were not human. Taiwan should have run away. Any sensible person would have run away. But he was a farmer, and those were his fields, and the strange machine had crushed his best vegetables. So he walked down the hill toward the crash site, holding his lantern high. The creatures saw him coming. There were 5 of them, tall and thin with skin like gray leather and too many joints in their arms and legs. They wore suits that covered their bodies and helmets that hid their faces. When they saw Taiwan approaching, they stopped what they were doing and turned to face him. Taiwan stopped about 20 meters away. He raised one hand in a gesture of peace. "Hello," he said. "You have landed on my land. Are you hurt? Do you need help?" The creatures did not respond. They looked at each other, making sounds that Taiwan could not understand. Then one of them pointed a device at him. A beam of light shot from the device. Lee Taiwan, farmer, father, simple man who only wanted to help, was vaporized where he stood. There was no pain. There was no time to feel pain. One moment he was alive, and the next moment he was gone. Nothing remained but a black mark on the ground. From her hiding place behind a rock on the hillside, 8-year-old Lee Yuna watched her father die. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run down there and attack the monsters who had killed her father. But something held her back. Some instinct told her that if she made a sound, she would die too. So she stayed silent. She stayed hidden. And she watched. Over the next 3 days, more creatures came. Ships descended from the sky, landing silently in the valley. Strange machines dug into the earth, pulling out rocks and minerals that Yuna had never seen before. The creatures worked day and night, never resting, never speaking in any language she could understand. Yuna hid in a well at the edge of her father's property. She drank rainwater and ate roots she pulled from the ground. She did not sleep. She could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the beam of light, saw her father disappear. On the 3rd night, the creatures finished their work. They loaded their machines back onto their ships. They filled in the holes they had dug. They erased every sign that they had ever been there. Then they did something that would haunt Yuna for the rest of her life. One of the creatures pulled out a different device. It pointed the device at the village, and a wave of blue light spread out across the valley. Yuna felt the light pass over her, felt a strange tingling in her head. The next morning, no one in the village remembered the crash. No one remembered the creatures. No one remembered that Lee Taiwan had ever existed. The creatures had erased him from memory. But they made a mistake. The well where Yuna was hiding was lined with metal, old pipes that her great-grandfather had installed long ago. That metal blocked the memory-erasing light. Yuna remembered everything. She climbed out of the well to find her home empty. She went to the village to find that no one recognized her. When she tried to tell people about her father, they looked at her with confusion. Lee Taiwan? Who was that? There was no farmer by that name. There never had been. Yuna was 8 years old, alone in the world, with a truth that no one would believe. But she survived. An old woman in a nearby town took pity on the orphan girl and gave her a home. Yuna grew up. She went to school. She discovered that she had a gift for science and mathematics. She learned about the universe, about physics, about the impossible mysteries of space and time. And she never forgot. In the fields where her father had died, Yuna found something the creatures had left behind. It was a small piece of metal, no bigger than her palm, broken off from one of their machines. It was made of an alloy that did not exist on Earth, a combination of elements that human science could not explain. Yuna kept that piece of metal hidden for her entire life. She studied it in secret. She learned everything she could about the night sky, searching for any sign of the creatures who had killed her father. She never found them. But she never stopped looking. When Yuna was old enough to have children of her own, she told them the truth. She showed them the metal fragment. She made them promise to remember, to pass the story down through the generations, to never forget what had happened. Someday, she told them, we will find the creatures who did this. Someday, we will make them pay. It may not be in my lifetime. It may not be in yours. But our family will have justice. Her children believed her. They passed the story to their children, who passed it to their children. Each generation added to the legacy. They became scientists, soldiers, engineers, politicians. They pushed humanity toward the stars, not for exploration or adventure, but for a single purpose, revenge. Lee Moran was born 112 years after her great-great-grandmother Yuna died. By then, humanity had discovered faster-than-light travel. They had met other species. They had joined the Galactic Council. And they had finally learned the truth. The creatures who killed Lee Taiwan were called the Dominari. They were one of the founding species of the Galactic Council. They had been mining Earth for Hearthstone, a rare mineral needed for their jump gate technology. When Taiwan approached them, they had classified him as a contamination risk and eliminated him. The council had covered up the incident. They had sealed the records. They had erased the evidence. But the Lee family had kept their own records. They had the metal fragment. They had Yuna's written testimony. They had proof. When Lee Moran showed this proof to the human government, the response was immediate. Emergency meetings were held in secret. Military leaders were called in. Plans were made. The Galactic Council thought humanity was a weak, primitive species that posed no threat. They were about to learn otherwise. In a hidden room beneath the mountains of Korea, Lee Moran stood before a gathering of the most powerful humans in the world. In her hands, she held the metal fragment that her ancestor had recovered 2 centuries ago. They killed an innocent man, she said. They stole from our world. They erased our memories. And they thought we would never find out. She placed the fragment on the table. They were wrong. For 50 years, humanity played a game. They smiled at their galactic neighbors. They traded goods and shared technology. They attended council meetings and paid their taxes without complaint. They acted like good, obedient citizens of the galaxy. It was all a lie. Captain Cho Hyun-woo sat in the command chair of the trading vessel, Morning Star, on the surface. His ship was a simple merchant craft, carrying goods between star systems. Below the surface, hidden behind false walls and encrypted computers, was the most advanced intelligence-gathering system ever built by human hands. Hyun-woo had spent 23 years as a merchant captain. He had visited every major council world. He had dined with Dominari generals and danced at Valkyrie celebrations. He had smiled and laughed and made friends with beings who would kill him without a second thought if they knew what he really was. Approaching Dominari Prime, his navigator announced. "Customs Patrol is hailing us." "Put them on screen," Hyun-woo said. A Dominari face appeared on the display. The species looked like someone had crossed a human with a reptile and then covered the result in armored plates. Their eyes were yellow with black slits, and their voices sounded like gravel being crushed. "Trading vessel Morning Star," the Dominari said. "State your business." "Delivering medical supplies," Hyun-woo replied with a friendly smile. "We have contracts with 3 hospitals in the capital city. All paperwork is in order." The Dominari examined the documents for a long moment. Then he waved a clawed hand in dismissal. "Proceed to Landing Zone 7. Do not deviate from your assigned flight path." "Understood. Thank you for your service." The connection closed. Hyun-woo let out a slow breath. Even after all these years, dealing with the Dominari made his stomach tight. These were the creatures who had killed Lee Taiwan. These were the ones who had stolen from Earth and erased human memories. And now, Hyun-woo was mapping their entire military network. "Beginning passive scans," his sensor officer reported. "I'm picking up 17 military installations, 4 orbital weapons platforms, and what looks like a command center in the northern continent." "Record everything," Hyun-woo said. "Let's make this trip count." On the other side of the galaxy, Commander Bae Yoonji sat in a small room surrounded by computer screens. She had not left this room in 3 days. Her eyes were red from staring at data streams, and her coffee had gone cold hours ago. But she did not care. She had finally done it. "Decryption complete," she whispered to herself. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up the decoded information. The Council uses a rotating encryption key based on quantum probability matrices. "Took me 2 years to crack the pattern, but now," she smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Now I can read every message they send." Yoonji was married to Captain Cho Hyun-woo. They had met at the Military Intelligence Academy 25 years ago and had fallen in love over long nights of code-breaking and strategy sessions. Their wedding gift to each other had been a promise. They would dedicate their lives to preparing humanity for war. She opened a secure channel. "This is Yoonji. I have good news for the Admiral." A moment later, Admiral Park Do-eun's face appeared on her screen. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. "What have you got?" "I cracked their encryption. All of it. Every military frequency, every diplomatic channel, every secret communication in the Council network. I can read them all." Do-eun closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, there was something that might have been hope. "That changes everything. Can you teach others?" "Already writing the manual. Give me a month, and we'll have 100 trained code breakers. You have 2 weeks." Yoonji nodded. She understood. They were running out of time. In a laboratory hidden beneath the surface of Mars, Dr. Han Jisoo made a discovery that would change human history. She had been studying alien biology for 30 years. She knew more about non-human species than almost anyone on Earth. But this discovery was something she had never expected. "The compound isn't everything," she explained to the committee that had gathered to hear her report. "Every Council space station, every trade ship, Every planet in their territory. It's in the air, in the water, in the food. They call it the peace gas, but the proper name is pacification compound. What does it do? One of the committee members asked. Jisoo pulled up a chemical diagram on the display behind her. It suppresses aggression. It makes beings calm, cooperative, and unlikely to question authority. Any species that breathes it long enough becomes docile. They lose the ability to resist. They lose the desire to fight. The committee sat in stunned silence. Finally, someone spoke. Are humans affected? Jisoo shook her head. No, that's the incredible part. Human brain chemistry is fundamentally different from every other species we've encountered. The compound simply doesn't work on us. We're immune. They've been drugging the entire galaxy? Another committee member asked. For how long? Based on my research, at least 3,000 years. Every species that has ever joined the Council has been exposed. That's why no one has ever successfully resisted them. That's why every negotiation ends with the Council getting what they want. The other species literally cannot fight back. The implications were staggering. The Galactic Council hadn't built their empire through wisdom or fairness. They had built it through mass sedation. They had drugged trillions of beings into compliance, and humanity was the first. Species immune to their control. The decision to build. A secret fleet was made within. A week of Dr. Han Jisoo's discovery. Admiral Park. Doan was given command. His mission was simple. Create a military force capable of challenging the Galactic Council. Without anyone in the galaxy knowing it existed, it should have been impossible. The Council monitored everything. They had sensors throughout human space, agents in human governments, spies in human businesses. Building a single warship in secret would be difficult. Building thousands would be unthinkable. Doan found a way. He started by identifying regions of space that the Council never monitored. There were not many. A few asteroid fields too dense for sensor coverage, some gas clouds that blocked scanning technology, a handful of dead systems that no one bothered to visit. But they were enough. We build in pieces, he explained to his senior officers. Each component is manufactured separately, in different locations, by different teams. The workers think they're making mining equipment or civilian technology. Only the final assembly crews know what we're really building. The first ship took 3 years to complete. By human standards, it was incredible. Faster than anything Earth had ever produced. Armed with weapons that could punch through Council shields. Protected by armor that could survive direct hits from orbital bombardment. By Council standards, it was still primitive. One ship could not challenge their fleets. But Doan wasn't building one ship. Over the next 2 decades, the hidden shipyards produced vessel after vessel. Each one was slightly better than the last, incorporating new technologies stolen by Captain Hyunwoo and decoded by Commander Yoonji. The human engineers learned and adapted in. Improved. By the time Ambassador Yoon-ji-won walked out of the Council chamber, humanity had 12,000 warships hidden in the darkness of space. Each one was crewed by volunteers who knew the truth about what the Council had done. Each one carried weapons designed specifically to exploit Council weaknesses, and each one was ready for war. Admiral Park Doan stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Remembrance. Around him, officers went about their duties with calm efficiency. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. They were ready. The Council will send an enforcement fleet, Doan said to his gathered commanders. They always do when a species refuses to negotiate. They expect us to surrender when we see their ships. He smiled. They will be disappointed. The Council enforcement fleet arrived at Earth exactly 14 days after Ambassador Yoon Ji-won walked out of the negotiations. 30 warships, each one larger than any vessel humans had ever built, emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Fleet Commander Vordak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominari's Fury. He was a veteran of 100 enforcement actions, and he had never lost a single engagement. Smaller species always surrendered when they saw the size of his fleet. That was how the galaxy worked. "Scan the system," he ordered. "Locate the human fleet." His sensor officer worked for a moment, then looked up with confusion on his armored face. "Commander, I'm detecting approximately 100 human vessels, mostly cargo ships and small patrol craft. Nothing that could challenge us." Vordak made a sound that passed for laughter among his species. As expected, open a channel to their lead ship. The communication screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of a human vessel. Vice Admiral Cam Minji sat in the command chair. She was a small woman with gray streaks in her black hair and eyes that showed no fear. "This is Fleet Commander Vordak of the Galactic Council Enforcement Division," Vordak announced. "You have refused to negotiate with the Council. This is your final chance. Surrender immediately, pay the required taxes and fines, and accept Council oversight of your government. Refuse, and your species will be conquered by force." Admiral Kang tilted her head slightly. "May I ask a question, Commander?" Vordak was surprised. Most species beg for mercy at this point. "Ask. Do you know why we refuse to negotiate?" "It does not matter why. You refused. That is enough. Let me tell you a story," Kang said. 263 years ago, a Council mining vessel crashed on Earth. The crew killed a farmer named Li Taiwan because he approached them peacefully. Then they erased the memories of everyone in his village and stole resources from his land. Vordak shifted uncomfortably. "I know nothing of this." "Of course you don't. It was classified, hidden in your sealed archives. But we found out anyway. We've spent 50 years preparing for this moment." Kang leaned forward. "You asked us to surrender. Let me give you our counteroffer." She pressed a button on her command chair. All around the Council fleet, space began to shimmer. Ships appeared out of nowhere, emerging from some kind of cloaking technology that Vordak had never seen before. Not dozens of ships. Not hundreds. Thousands. 2,000 warships in the Earth Defense Fleet, Kang said calmly. 10,000 more positioned throughout Council space. All of them crewed by humans who know exactly what your Council did to our world. Vordak's sensor officer was making sounds of panic. "Commander, they're surrounding us. Weapons are charging. Our shields won't hold against this many. You have 30 seconds to surrender," Kang interrupted. "After that, we will destroy your fleet and proceed with the next phase of our operation." Vordak stared at the screen. This was impossible. Humans were primitive. Humans were weak. They couldn't have built a fleet like this. They couldn't have hidden it from Council sensors. They couldn't. 20 seconds. "You're bluffing," Vordak said. "Those ships are holograms. Some kind of trick. You can't. 10 seconds. Vordak looked at his sensor officer. "Are they real?" The officer nodded slowly, his yellow eyes wide with fear. "They're real, Commander. All of them." 5 seconds. Vordak opened his mouth to order a surrender. He was too slow. The human fleet opened fire. The battle lasted exactly 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Human weapons sliced through Council shields like they weren't there. The technology was decades ahead of anything the Council had developed, built from stolen secrets and human innovation combined. The Dominari's Fury was the last ship to fall. As his bridge exploded around him, Fleet Commander Vordak had just enough time to realize that everything he thought he knew about humans was wrong. Then there was only fire. Across the galaxy, the war began in earnest. On Dominari Prime, the lights went out. Every power grid on the planet failed simultaneously. In the darkness, panicked citizens flooded into the streets, looking up at the sky and wondering what was happening. On Valkyrie Colony 7, the jump gates stopped working. Ships that tried to enter faster than light travel found themselves going nowhere. The entire Valkyrie fleet was stranded, unable to respond to calls for help from other systems. On the Council homeworld, every screen, every display, every communication device suddenly showed the same image: Ambassador Yoon Ji-won's face. 263 years ago, she began. The Galactic Council murdered an innocent man. Intelligence Director Moon Si-jun had spent 30 years placing sleeper agents throughout the galaxy. Human diplomats, traders, scientists, and workers who seemed perfectly normal but were secretly waiting for the signal. When that signal came, they moved with perfect coordination. They sabotaged power systems. They crashed computer networks. They disabled weapons platforms. They did everything possible to blind and cripple the Council's military response. And they revealed the truth. In every Council system, the sealed archives were suddenly opened. Information that had been hidden for centuries was broadcast to the public. Not just the story of Lee Taiwan, but thousands of other crimes. Species that had been conquered. Worlds that had been stripped of resources. Populations that had been drugged into submission with the pacification compound. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Species that had served the Council for millennia suddenly remembered why they had always felt so calm, so compliant, so unable to resist. When they learned about the compound in their air and water and food, their reaction was fury. "The humans have given us a gift," said the leader of the Namari Collective, a species of gaseous beings who had been council members for 3,000 years. "They have given us the truth, and they have given us a chance to be free." Not every species joined the human cause. Some were too dependent on council trade. Some were too afraid of change. Some had been breathing the pacification compound for so long that they couldn't bring themselves to fight even when they wanted to. But enough joined, more than enough. General Shin Daon led the ground assault on Dominari Prime. His forces landed in the capital city at dawn, supported by orbital bombardment that had already destroyed the planet's military defenses. The Dominari had never faced an invasion before. They had always been the invaders, the enforcers, the ones who brought other species to heel. They didn't know how to fight on their own soil. The human soldiers moved through the streets with terrible efficiency. They had trained for this. They had studied Dominari tactics and weaknesses. They had weapons designed specifically to penetrate Dominari armor. And they had something else. Something the Dominari had never faced before. Rage. Every human soldier knew the story of Lee Taiwan. They knew that the Dominari had killed an innocent farmer for approaching peacefully. They knew that the Dominari had laughed about it, had classified it as pest control, had never lost a moment's sleep over the life they had taken. Now the debt was being paid. General Shin found the descendants of Councilor Vrax in a bunker beneath the capital. They were huddled together, surrounded by guards who threw down their weapons when they saw the human soldiers approaching. "Please," the eldest Vrax descendant begged. "We had nothing to do with what our ancestor did. We were not even born. You cannot hold us responsible for crimes committed centuries ago." Shin looked at him for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "You're right," he said. "You are not responsible for your ancestors' crimes. You will not be executed. You will not be tortured. You will face a fair trial, with evidence and lawyers and a judge." The Dominari looked confused. "A trial? But we are the accused. We are the enemy. Why would you give us a fair trial?" "Because that's what Lee Taiwan would have wanted," Shin replied. "He was a peaceful man who believed in justice. If we killed you without trial, we would be no better than the people who killed him." He gestured to his soldiers. "Take them into custody. Treat them with dignity. They will answer for their family's crimes. that they will answer in a court of law. The Dominari were led away, still looking confused. They had expected vengeance. They had expected massacre. They had expected humans to be as brutal as the Council had always claimed. Instead, they found something else entirely. They found justice. As his soldiers secured the capital, General Shin looked up at the alien sky. Somewhere out there, Admiral Park Don was coordinating the final phase of the war. Somewhere out there, Ambassador Yoon Ji-won was preparing to address the galaxy. And somewhere, he hoped, the spirit of Lee Taiwan was finally at peace. The reckoning had come. And humanity had proven that strength did not require cruelty, that power did not require brutality. They could have destroyed the Dominari. They could have burned their worlds and exterminated their species. Instead, they chose a harder path. The path of the farmer who had approached strangers with open hands and peaceful words. Even in victory, humanity remembered who they wanted to be. The war lasted 18 months. When it ended, the galaxy was a different place. Admiral Park Don stood on the observation deck of the UE's Lee Taiwan, watching as the last Council battle fleet powered down its weapons and raised the signal of surrender. The flagship had been renamed in honor of the farmer whose death had started everything. It seemed fitting. "They're requesting terms," his communications officer reported. "The Council speaker wants to negotiate." Dowan smiled, but there was no joy in it. "Tell them negotiations will take place on the Council homeworld." In the same chamber where Ambassador Yoon walked out. "That seems appropriate." The journey took 3 days. When the human delegation arrived at the Council chamber, they found it almost empty. Where 10,000 representatives had once gathered, now only a few hundred remained. Many species had withdrawn from the Council entirely. Others were too ashamed to show their faces. Prelax was still there. The insectoid speaker sat on his platform, looking somehow smaller than before. His shell had lost its shine, and his movements were slow and tired. "You have won," Prelax said as the humans entered. "What do you want from us?" Ambassador Yoon Ji-won walked to the center of the chamber. Behind her came Admiral Doan, General Shin Doan, Intelligence Director Moon Seojin, and dozens of other humans who had made this moment possible. At the very back of the group, moving slowly with the help of a walking device, came an elderly woman. Lee Moran was 142 years old. Her hair was white and her face was lined with age, but her eyes were sharp and clear. In her hands, she carried a small metal fragment, the same piece of alien alloy that her ancestor, Yuna, had recovered from the crash ship 263 years ago. "We want 3 things," Yoon Ji-won said. Her voice carried through the vast chamber, amplified by the same system that had once broadcast Council demands. "First, the pacification compound will be eliminated from all atmospheric systems. Every species in the galaxy will be able to think clearly for the first time in 3,000 years. Murmurs ran through the remaining Council members. Some looked relieved. Others looked terrified. The compound had been the foundation of Council control. Without it, everything would change. Second, Ji-won continued, the sealed archives will be opened. Every crime the Council has committed against developing worlds will be exposed. The species of this galaxy deserve to know the truth about their history. That will cause chaos, Prelek said weakly. When they learn what we did, there will be violence, revenge, wars. Probably, Ji-won agreed. But that is not our problem to solve. You created this situation by lying and manipulating for centuries. The consequences are yours to face. She paused for a moment, letting her words sink in. Then she continued. Third, the Council will be restructured. Humanity will hold a permanent seat with oversight authority. Our role will be to ensure that no civilization is ever again exploited the way Earth was exploited. We will watch. We will investigate. And if we find evidence of crimes against developing species, we will act. You want to become the new masters of the galaxy, Prelax said bitterly. You want to control us all. No, Jiwan shook her head. We want to prevent anyone from being the masters of the galaxy. We want a system where every species is free to develop on their own terms, without interference, without exploitation, without having their memories erased and their resources stolen. She gestured to Li Moran. The old woman stepped forward, moving slowly but with purpose. 263 years ago, Jiwan said, a farmer named Li Taiwan approached your people with open hands and peaceful words. He wanted to help. He wanted to understand. And you killed him for it. Moran held up the metal fragment. It caught the light, shimmering with colors that did not exist in any earth metal. My ancestor was that farmer, Moran said. Her voice was soft, but the amplification system carried it to every corner of the chamber. I am the last living descendant of his family. I have carried this fragment my entire life, waiting for this moment. She looked around the chamber, at the alien faces watching her with fear and confusion and, in some cases, shame. When I was young, I wanted revenge. I wanted to destroy everyone who had hurt my family. I wanted to burn this council to the ground and salt the ashes. She paused, taking a slow breath. But that is not what my ancestor would have wanted. Li Taiwan was a simple man, a peaceful man. He approached strangers with kindness because that was who he was. If he were here today, he would not want us to become monsters in his name. She placed the metal fragment on the speaker's podium. It made a small sound against the crystal surface. This is your reminder, Moran said. We do not forget. We do not forgive. But we can choose to build something better. That is the path my ancestor would have chosen. That is the path we choose now. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, Prelax lowered his head. We accept your terms, he said. The compound will be eliminated. The archives will be opened. The council will be restructured under human oversight. We have no choice. You always have a choice, Yoon Ji-won replied. That's the point. For 3,000 years, you took away the choice of every species in the galaxy. Now we're giving it back. What you do with that freedom is up to you. She turned to face the observation galleries, where camera drones were broadcasting this moment to every corner of known space. To the species of the galaxy, she said, we are not your new masters. We are not here to rule you or control you. We are here to make sure that what happened to Earth never happens to anyone else. You are free. How you use that freedom is your decision. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer. We know this will be hard. The compound has been affecting you for generations. When it wears off, you will feel things you have not felt in centuries. Anger, fear, the desire to fight. That is normal. That is natural. You have been drugged into false peace for too long. But we ask you to remember something. Violence and war are not the only options. Li Taiwan proved that. He faced monsters with open hands and peaceful words. He was killed for it, yes. But his spirit, his example, inspired generations of humans to become strong enough to challenge an entire galaxy without losing our humanity in the process. Be angry. Be free, but also be kind. Be patient. Build the galaxy you want to live in, not the galaxy that was forced upon you. She turned back to face the empty council chamber. This session is adjourned. 1 year later, Yoon Ji-won stood in the same chamber. But everything was different now. The seats were filled again, but with different representatives. Species that had withdrawn from the council in shame had returned, led by new leaders chosen by free populations. Species that had never been allowed to join were now welcomed as equals. The atmosphere was different, more chaotic, more argumentative, but also more alive. The pacification compound was gone. Every species in the galaxy was thinking clearly for the first time in millennia. It was messy and difficult, and sometimes frightening, but it was real. G1 had been elected, first Speaker of the reformed Galactic Assembly. It was not a position of power. The new system was designed to prevent anyone from having too much power, but it was a position of responsibility. Her job was to guide discussions, to mediate disputes, to remind everyone of the principles they had agreed to follow. Today, she was about to make an important announcement. 1 year ago, she began, humanity revealed the truth about the Galactic Council. We exposed crimes that had been hidden for centuries. We dismantled a system of control that had oppressed trillions of beings. Some of you thanked us. Some of you blamed us for the chaos that followed. Both reactions were fair. She looked around the chamber at the hundreds of different species watching her. But this was never about humanity. This was about a simple farmer who died 263 years ago because he believed in kindness. Every decision we made, every action we took, was guided by a simple question. What would Li Taiwan have done? She smiled. The answer was always the same. He would have approached strangers with open hands. He would have tried to help. He would have believed in the possibility of peace, even when evidence suggested otherwise. We could have conquered this galaxy. We had the weapons, the intelligence, the determination. We could have made ourselves the new council, ruling over everyone else, just as the old council did. Some of you expected that. Some of you still fear it. She shook her head. That was never our goal. We became strong because we had to. We built our fleet because we had no choice. But strength was never the point. The point was always justice. The point was always freedom. The point was always a galaxy where a farmer could approach strangers without being killed for his kindness. We have achieved that goal. The old council is gone. The compound is eliminated. Every species is free to choose their own path. Our work here is finished. She paused, letting her words sink in. Humanity will maintain our oversight position as agreed. We will watch for abuses. We will investigate crimes against developing species. But we will not interfere with your choices. We will not tell you how to govern yourselves. We will not become the new masters. She looked up at the observation gallery, where Limeran sat in a place of honor. The old woman nodded slowly, a smile on her weathered face. My ancestors taught me that true strength